Charles Ingram wins £1 million on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and then a stranger's cough deletes it. On stage, it looks like the cleanest miracle run you've ever seen. On tape, in the edit suite, that cough keeps showing up like a little ghost with perfect timing. Charles is a British Army major with the Royal Engineers, and on camera he doesn't act like a guy who's about to become a millionaire. He's hesitant. He second-guesses himself out loud, he changes his mind late, and he sounds like he's talking himself into the wrong answer right up until he doesn't. And somehow, question after question, he lands on the correct option anyway. This is the UK's biggest show at its peak, with Chris Tarrant in the chair, and the whole format built around silence. Multiple choice questions, a studio that goes pin drop quiet, and contestants close enough to hear everything because they're waiting in the fastest finger first area. And the show kind of encourages a habit that matters later. Contestants repeat the answers aloud, like they're trying them on. Earlier in 2001, Charles's wife Diana had already been on the show and won £32,000, and her brother Adrian Pollock also won £32,000. So the Ingrams aren't new to the vibe. They know how the room feels when the money climbs and your mouth goes dry. Charles's £1 million run is recorded over 2 evenings at Elstree Studios in Hertfordshire on 9th to 10th September 2001. The next day, the world changes with 9/11. But inside that studio, the biggest drama is still 4 answer choices and a man sweating under the lights. And then on night 2, Tequin Whittock is there among the other contestants. He's a lecturer from South Wales, a quiz enthusiast, and to the prosecution later on, he's the missing piece. Because as Charles leans harder into saying each option out loud, it creates these perfect little beats, where a sound from the room could steer him without anyone needing to say a word. Here's the simple version of what prosecutors said was happening. Charles reads or repeats an option, and a cough lands right on the correct one. Not a hacked computer, not a rigged question, just a tiny signal hiding inside studio noise. Charles hesitates, drifts, then suddenly pivots and locks the right answer like he's had an epiphany. If you're in that chair and a cough lands the exact second you say one option out loud, do you call it coincidence or do you take the nudge? Be honest, because it sounds ridiculous until you imagine the pressure, the silence, and your own brain begging for any sign at all. The strange part is how the run feels when you watch it back. Charles doesn't look confident. He wobbles, he floats one answer, then mentions another, then circles back like he's lost. But then, right when it matters, he swerves to the correct choice and says it like he's finally listening to himself. The alleged pattern is most dramatic on the questions, where he seems to have a favorite that's wrong. He'll talk himself toward it, then say the correct answer almost casually, like a throwaway. And right there, when the correct one gets spoken, a cough pops from the contestants' area. Then Charles's whole energy shifts, and the answer changes. Midway through, there's a pop music question about Craig David. Charles toys with the wrong title, and you can hear him trying to make it fit in his head. Then the correct album name, Born to Do It, gets spoken out loud, and that's when the suspicious timing shows up again. He flips late and locks it in, and if you're watching at home, you just think, wow, lucky guess, what a comeback. But the higher the stakes, the louder the silence gets. By the time he's deep into the money ladder, each pause feels like it costs rent. Charles keeps repeating options, almost as if he's waiting for his own thoughts to sound different the second time he says them. Then comes one of the questions people still bring up because it's so clean as a tell on replay. The Google question. Charles muses around it. He sounds like he wants something familiar like a million. And then he repeats the word Google out loud. And again, that's the moment that matters, because the cough lands right there and the final answer follows. What makes this whole thing so hard to spot in the moment is that it's not one huge, obvious signal. It's just a cough. in a studio full of people during a long recording. And Tequin Whittick later claimed he had a persistent cough because of allergies, which sure, plenty of people do. But the producers start asking a different question. Why does the coughing line up so neatly when the correct option is spoken? On the studio floor, Chris Tarrant doesn't notice anything that feels like a scam unfolding. He later says as much, and that tracks, because if you're hosting, you're focused on the contestant, the pacing, the tension, and not on whether a guy in the back is clearing his throat with suspicious ambition. The million gets announced. Chris presents the big £1 million check on stage. Charles looks like a man who just got away with something, or a man who can't believe he didn't mess it up, depending on what you think happened. Either way, in that room, it plays as a legitimate win. Then the real trap springs, and it doesn't happen under the lights. It happens later in post-production, when people are watching the tapes like their job depends on it, because it does. Mid to late September 2001, producers reviewing the recordings flag something odd, not a single moment, but a repeating rhythm, coughs that seem to arrive when the right answers are read out or repeated, especially on the questions where Charles is openly unsure and talking through multiple options. Celador, the production company behind the format, starts pulling the thread. They isolate audio tracks. They look at seating plans. They identify where the coughs are coming from, and Tequin Whittick becomes the center of that map. They log the moments like a grim little spreadsheet. Option spoken, cough heard, answer switches. And once you start doing that, the whole run looks different. What felt like indecision starts looking like a search pattern. Like Charles is saying the options out loud not because he's nervous, but because he's waiting for a cue. And the cue is a cough that's always just loud enough to be there, and just normal enough that you could ignore it if you wanted to. Celador withholds the check. The £1 million doesn't get paid out, and the matter goes to police. By 2002, Charles Ingram, Diana Ingram, and Tequin Whittick are charged with procuring the execution of a valuable security by deception, which is a very formal way of saying you tricked the show into producing a £1 million prize. At Suffolk Crown Court in March and April 2003, the case becomes a battle over sound and timing. The prosecution brings enhanced audio and lays out the pattern, showing coughs synced to the moments Charles repeats the correct option and then changes course. The defense leans on coincidence and on Whittick's claimed cough, because the whole case is basically arguing over whether a throat noise is a signal or just a throat noise. There's a specific kind of discomfort that comes from hearing something after you've been told what it means. The tape plays, Charles repeats an option, a cough hits right there, and seconds later he commits. And once your brain locks onto that timing, it's hard to unhear it. On April 7th, 2003, all three are convicted. Charles and Diana get 18 months suspended for 2 years, and Whittick gets 12 months suspended for 2 years. Reported fines follow too, including figures like £15,000 for each of the Ingrams and £10,000 for Whittick, plus costs that get reported in different ways depending on the outlet. The important part is simple. The win is voided, and Charles never receives the money. In 2006, the Court of Appeal upholds the convictions, which means the cough stays officially guilty. Then ITV airs a documentary, Millionaire, a major fraud, on 21st April 2003, and it pulls in an audience reported at over 17 million. They play the run with the coughs isolated and enhanced, basically turning a courtroom exhibit into appointment television. Funny thing is, Charles never saw the million, but the cough gets its own blockbuster moment with the volume turned up. So here's a question for you before you go. Do you think you'd catch that kind of signal sitting in the studio, or only later with headphones on and a producer pointing at the waveform? Enjoyed this story? Leave a like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next one. Now you know.